Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. British American Tobacco, the controversial long-term strategic investor in ITC, to sell 3.5% stake through block deals. The sale is likely to fetch BAT over 16,700 crore rupees. BAT is not the only foreign investor cashing in on high valuations in India. Global parents of Whirlpool and Timken have also paid stake. Sumitomo Wiring sold over 4% stake in Samvardhana Motherson just last week. Sensex and Nifty end flat, but mid-caps and small-caps take a beating in trade. 80% of mid-cap stocks end in the red. The small-cap index is down over 9% since hitting record highs last month. Inflation remains steady in February at just over 5%, even as food prices accelerate. Core inflation cools to 3.3%. Industrial output in January also remains steady at 3.8%.
India should be on the front foot. This is India's moment.
Citigroup's global CEO Jane Frasia upbeat about India's growth prospects, as India is the obvious choice for companies diversifying their supply chains. Believes no country can match India's scale and talent base. That's an exclusive. State Bank of India submits electoral bond data to the Election Commission as per the Supreme Court order. The Election Commission, in its directions, said that the ECI is supposed to upload the data on its website by the 15th of March. Major reshuffle in Haryana. State BJP President and Lok Sabha MP Nayab Singh Saini takes oath as Chief Minister after predecessor Khattar resigns, along with the entire cabinet. Marks the end of the alliance with Dushyant Chautala's party. The new government is backed by 6 independents. The trust vote will take place at the Haryana Assembly tomorrow. The Union government launches a new web portal for people applying for citizenship under the Citizenship Amendment Act. Indian Union Muslim League moves the Supreme Court, seeking to restrain the government from implementing the CAA. Chief Ministers of Kerala, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal say they will not implement the CAA in their states. Ahead of the Lok Sabha elections, onion farmers in Maharashtra see red over the government's export ban. Traders and exporters say they are rethinking their support to the BJP after facing significant monetary losses. As always, let's start with the market action. The Sensex and the Nifty did close the day flat after a volatile session. All the action was in the mid-cap and the small-cap space. The mid-cap index was down nearly 700 points today. That's the story there, 1.5% lower. In fact, 80% of the mid-cap stocks ended with losses today. Small caps also battered, down by about 2%, a cut of about 300 points today. The small-cap index has lost over 9% since hitting record highs on the 8th of February. In fact, the pain was visible across smaller stocks, and the correction is only intensifying. The Nifty micro-cap index was down over 2%, and the BSE SME IPO index was down by about 5%. So that was where the pain was visible today. In fact, mutual funds will conduct stress tests on mid-cap and small-cap funds to reassess the risk parameters. How will this exercise unfold, and how should investors react to it? Surabhi joins us now with a look at what SEBI is proposing and what we should expect. Surabhi.
Well, the fact that we will get these stress test results on Friday, that seems to be adding to the sense of nerves on the market out there. So let's just talk about what's going to happen and why it's happening. Well, the why is pretty simple because, it is small cap funds and mid cap funds that have been drawing in the lion's share of money compared to large cap funds. So what is really going to happen? The stress tests are to evaluate what happens to liquidity, what happens to risk parameters if there are sudden large redemptions that these funds start facing. Now, the results have to be made public. As I said, March 15 is the date that they will be out. The SEBI is also concerned about the quote-unquote froth in certain pockets of the market, particularly in mid-caps and small caps. So it's been having this dialogue with the mutual fund body, and therefore we are seeing what we are seeing. So let's talk about the test. So what will be tested and how will this play out? First of all, the definition of a stress situation. When does the market experience stress? So what mutual funds have said that, whenever the volumes are 3 times the normal, that will constitute a stress situation, and also where market participation is only 10% because of fear or other factors. There's only 10% participation. So what happens if investors start asking for their money back? How do you redeem and how do you pay back investors? That's the crux of this exercise. So what will the tests reveal? The tests are supposed to reveal how many days it will take every single mid-cap or small-cap mutual fund scheme to redeem A, 25% of the portfolio, and then B, 50% of the portfolio in these stress situations. Now, bear in mind that the most illiquid part of the portfolio, which comprises almost 20% of the weight, that will not be taken into account when we conduct these, when mutual funds conduct these stress tests. So that's one thing to keep an eye out on. But as I said, this is happening for the first time, and investors are also wondering how to read the results and, you know, whether this will lead to some kind of rebalancing or additional pressures. That's why there is some amount of sort of nervousness out there. And let me add to it what the SEBI chief told us about SME IPOs. She answered a CNBC-TV18 query very specifically, because on a separate note, I mean, there's a lot of, talk about possible price manipulation, and that is something she actually acknowledged, and she said the regulator will be acting on it very, very soon. Take a look.
Are there some entities which are perhaps misusing that facilitative framework? We have received feedback that that is the case. The reality is that these are relatively small entities. The market cap is small, the free float is small. It is relatively easy to manipulate both at the IPO level and at the trading level. In terms of actual price manipulation, both at the IPO level and at the trading level, we are working, to evidence that.
Well, that's the SEBI chief's warning on SMEs as well as froth in the market, and that certainly seems to be impacting sentiment as far as the small and mid-cap space is concerned. But the big corporate story, British American Tobacco, the controversial long-term strategic investor in ITC, has decided to pare its stake in the company. Why controversial? Because of that big takeover battle that ensued many, many years ago. Now, BAT will sell 3.5% stake in ITC worth over 16,700 crore rupees through block deals. The sale will be in the range of 384 to 400 rupees a share. ITC today closed at just over 404 rupees per share. Now, currently, BAT holds about 29% stake in ITC, and after this stake sale, its shareholding will drop to 25.5% shares of ITC. So it continues to have strategic interest in the company. ITC has been rising steadily over the last few years. In fact, in 2022, ITC shares gained 37%, and in 2023, ITC gained over 38%. But in 2024, ITC shares have corrected by over 12% since the buzz about this BAT stake sale began. Now, BAT, by the way, is not the only global company cashing in on the rally and valuations that we've seen in India. Just last week, Sumitomo Wiring Systems sold its stake in Samvardhana Motherson worth over 3,600 crore rupees. In February, Whirlpool's global parent sold 24% stake in its India unit while maintaining a controlling shareholding of 51%. And in fact, in June, Timken India's global parent company sold 8% stake through block deals. Speaking exclusively to CNBC, Whirlpool's global CEO said high valuations are the reason behind Whirlpool selling its stake in its India arm. He also said that Whirlpool remains committed to India and will continue to expand in the market. Take a look.
We're not leaving India. So first of all, to put it in context, we kind of divested a big part of our China business. We sold Russia. We acquired the very attractive incinerator business in Wisconsin. And India, we basically took our share down to 51%. It was, frankly, I mean, we believe in India in the long term. But if you have a business which is trading at 50 times multiple and your own company trades a lot lower, it's basically an asset arbitrage. That's what it is. But we really believe in the long-term future growth of India.
Well, MNC parents cashing in on their Indian arms and the stock price rise that we've seen here. Now, shares of Aditya Birla Capital surging in trade after the company's board approved the merger with its wholly owned arm, Aditya Birla Finance. The move is aimed at complying with RBI's scale-based regulations ahead of the September 2025 deadline. Post the amalgamation, Aditya Birla Capital will be converted from a holding company to an operating non-bank finance company. And staying with the Aditya Birla Group, promoters of Aditya Birla Sun Life AMC are likely to launch an offer for sale to pare stake in order for the company to comply with SEBI's minimum 25% public float. That is the rule that the regulator has, and we are given to understand that they will comply with that public float norm by September this year. Sources say Aditya Birla Capital could reduce its stake to 45%, while Sun Life AMC could reduce its stake to 30% by September of this year. On to the macros. Inflation remains steady in February at just over 5%, even as food prices accelerated. Meanwhile, core inflation cooling to 3.3%. Industrial output in January also remains steady at 3.8%. Ritu is standing by now to decode the macros for us. Ritu, so steady as far as the macros are concerned?
Yes, in fact, retail inflation is at a 5-month low, the reading that is coming for the month of February. Little change at 5.09% when you compare it to 5.1% that we saw in January. Also broadly in line with our 5.1% number that we saw in our poll. And, you know, this is the 6th consecutive month that CPI inflation has remained within RBI's target band of 2 to 6%. You know, barring food inflation, which remains a spot of bother, the easing was largely on the back of some broad-based moderation that we saw in prices. Food price actually, that saw an 8.66% inflation in February, which is about 30 basis points higher than the previous month. The big culprit remains vegetable prices. The highest rate of inflation is, what we saw there at 30.3% over the previous year. And the economists that we spoke to earlier, they said with onion prices going up again, food prices will continue to exhibit these kind of tendencies. Cereals, eggs, your sugar, spices, pulses, these were the other pain points when you look at the CPI data, whereas edible oils and fats, they brought down inflation to some extent. But the big positive surprise was the core inflation number, that is inflation without food and fuel, the headline number. That came down, core inflation, to 3.37% in February from 3.6% in January, and from the peaks of 6% that we saw last year, a very encouraging trend. Rural inflation was higher at 5.3% and urban at 4.8%. Now, on the IIP data, the December numbers have been revised up. So if you look at the January IIP growth has eased actually to 3.8% from the revised number of 4.2% for the previous month. Also a tad below what our poll threw up. Mining growth improved over the previous month at 5.9% in January. Electricity as well showing a good growth month on month, but manufacturing with the heaviest weight in the index, that grew slower at 3.2%. Primary goods saw a 2.9% growth, capital goods 4.1%, infra goods 4.6%, and so on. The consumer durables output, now that jumped very sharply at 10.9% from December's 5.3%, but this was also supported by a favorable base. But the contraction in consumer non-durables, that continued to show a weakness, and that sort of shows that consumption demand remains hit. But, it'll be interesting to see, because with inflation coming down, whether that starts to reflect in improving consumption demand in the coming months, that is something we'll watch out for.
All right, Ritu, many thanks for joining us. That's the big macro data for you. Now, the Company Law Appellate Tribunal has upheld the transfer of Jet Airways ownership to the Jalan Kalrock Consortium. Remember, the Company Law Tribunal had permitted the transfer of ownership to JKC in January of 2023, but several lenders had challenged the decision. Today, the Appellate Tribunal, while dismissing lenders' plea, has directed them to effect the transfer in 90 days and had asked Jalan Kalrock Consortium to obtain an air operator's certificate within this window. The crisis at SpiceJet continues. Two senior executives, Chief Operating Officer Arun Kashyap and Chief Commercial Officer Shilpa Bhatia, have resigned. Both Kashyap and Bhatia had quit the carrier earlier and rejoined later. A SpiceJet spokesperson told CNBC-TV18 several members of the commercial team have quit as part of SpiceJet's strategic restructuring. The airline also added that with the recent fundraise, it has speeded up the process of resolution of all past disputes. The big newsmaker this evening, Citigroup's global CEO Jane Frasia, believes this is India's moment and the country should be on the front foot. Frasia is currently visiting India and believes the opportunity is there for the taking. Calling India the obvious choice for companies looking to diversify their supply chains, Frasia said no country can match India's scale and talent base.
The China Plus is turned into a nearshoring, a friendshoring, and a diversification. In certain sectors, it is both China and the US are decoupling, but in most instances, what we see is healthier than that, because decoupling is never great, and it's a diversification. India is the obvious choice. It is very difficult to replace the scale, the cost, and the quality of India and China. And Mexico, Japan, they're the only countries really in the world that can do this. And India is probably the best place of all to become that, the addition to China in new supply chain around the world.
Well, that's Citi's global CEO. And from one newsmaker to another, Qualcomm's global CEO, Cristiano Amore, says the company is working on a chip to enable an affordable 5G smartphone at less than $99. He believes this phone could be rolled out by the second half of the year. Speaking exclusively to CNBC-TV18, Qualcomm also promised to support semiconductor makers who want to set up shop in India. Take a look.
We want to see a geographically diversified and resilient supply chain. So if India builds a semiconductor manufacturing capability or a hub, or even for assembly, Qualcomm's going to be there as a customer. And I think that's one of the biggest contributions we can provide.
Well, that's Qualcomm on its plans for India. Quick check at more headlines this evening. The union government grants a 50% GST relief on purchases made from central police canteens. Sources say the Home Ministry will pay the balance 50% of the goods and services tax for those sales from budget allocations. Sellers who use central police canteens need to submit bills to the Home Ministry. Currently, only military canteen stores were eligible for the waiver. Now, police canteens will also enjoy the same benefits. Market regulator SEBI has asked Vedanta to pay Cain UK Holdings over 77 crore rupees plus an interest of 18% for delayed dividend payment during 2014 and 2017. Non-payment of dues within 45 days will lead to further action by SEBI. SEBI has also directed several board members of Vedanta, including the chairman and managing director, to not access the securities market for up to 2 months. Some directors and the CFO have been restrained from accessing the market for a month. In 2017, Cain UK had raised a complaint with SEBI and claimed non-payment of dividends to the tune of 340 crore rupees by Cain India Limited, which then merged with Vedanta Limited. That is the latest. Now, the big national story just ahead of the Lok Sabha polls, a major reshuffle in Haryana. BJP's Naib Singh Saini took over as the new Chief Minister of Haryana. His predecessor, Manohar Lal Khattar, and his cabinet have resigned. The BJP's alliance with Dushyant Chautala's JJP has collapsed, but the BJP is likely to stay in power with the support of independents. Saini, a Lok Sabha MP from Hisar, is also the state's BJP president. Reports suggest that Manohar Lal Khattar will be given a ticket to fight in the upcoming Lok Sabha elections. The big story, State Bank of India has finally submitted the electoral bond data to the Election Commission, complying with the Supreme Court order. Now, as per the directions of the court, the Election Commission will now have to upload the data on its website by the 15th of March. Parikshit is standing by with the latest on the electoral bonds matter. Parikshit, the Supreme Court had made it clear that State Bank of India would need to comply with its order by end of day today or face contempt. What do we know so far in terms of what data has been supplied and what next?
Well, we have just received a confirmation from the Election Commission of India. The Election Commission of India has made a public statement saying that they have received electoral bond data from the State Bank of India. Now, this is as per the orders of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court had rejected SBI's plea for extension of time till the 30th of June in order to match all the data and submit it before the court. The court had said that it can take very strict action against the bank if it fails to comply with these orders. Now, what happens? The Election Commission has its task cut out. Over the next 2 days, they have to collate all this data and publish it on their website by the 15th of March. That is Friday till about 5 p.m. What all will be there on the website? Donor data in terms of the names of the donors, the amount donated by a particular donor, and who was the recipient. Now, many experts have said that the actual donor or matching the code of the donor might be difficult, but what we may actually get to know is certain trends related to quid pro quo. Now, this is what activists and opposition parties would be looking for. They would be scanning the electoral bond data for such trends of quid pro quo, trying to see if anyone has benefited from donating to a particular party. So let's keep that aside. But what we also have to see is whether a compliance affidavit has been submitted by the SBI chairman and the managing director, and that would have to happen because that was also the order of the Supreme Court. There is also an interesting letter that has been written by the Supreme Court Bar Association to the President of India, asking her to restrain the implementation of this verdict of the Supreme Court, saying that there should be a presidential reference and it should not be implemented. So let's see how this functions. But quite clearly, the Supreme Court has made it very clear that all of this information has to be in public domain. So by Friday, all of this will be out. We will get to know more steps from the Election Commission. Interestingly, on the 14th, one day before all the electoral bond data comes out, the committee to appoint the election commissioners is also meeting at 12 noon on Thursday. So a lot of developments at the Election Commission over the next 2-3 days.
Yes, many developments, and we will have to wait to see in what fashion the data has been submitted, whether the data is actually collated or, as the Supreme Court had said, you know, we don't care if you don't match it, just give the data out. So we will have to see what has been sent by State Bank of India and what the Election Commission puts out. Up next on India Business Hour, ahead of the Lok Sabha elections, onion farmers in Maharashtra see red over the government's export ban. A special report when we return. You can catch all of CNBC-TV18's news and updates on Facebook, X, Threads, Instagram and JioCinema. The Centre has launched an online portal for people planning to apply for Indian citizenship under the Citizenship Amendment Act. The Centre has notified the rules under the Act just yesterday, which essentially expedites the citizenship process for Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, Parsis, Buddhist and Christian migrants from Pakistan, Bangladesh and Afghanistan who arrived in India before December 31st, 2014. The notification comes more than 4 years after the law was passed in Parliament and weeks ahead of the Lok Sabha elections. It doesn't apply to certain areas in the northeast. The Indian Union Muslim League has moved the Supreme Court seeking to restrain the government from implementing the CAA. Chief Ministers of Kerala, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal have said they will not implement the CAA in their states. Protests also observed in some pockets of the country, while there were celebrations in many parts across the country, calling the notification a welcome move. This includes Delhi's Majnu Ka Tila.
लाखों करोड़ों लोग पाकिस्तान से और बांग्लादेश से अपना धर्म बचाने के लिए, अपना सम्मान बचाने के लिए इस देश में आए, उनको नागरिकता नहीं मिलती थी। अपने ही देश में वो नागरिकता के बगैर अपमानित होते थे। नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने हिंदू, बौद्ध, जैन, ये सारे सिख, ये सारे लोगों को नागरिकता देकर उनका सम्मान करने का काम नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने किया है।
I'm fully in support of the decision of the India Alliance's Indian Union Muslim League to go to the Supreme Court against this. And I must say, if the India Alliance and the Congress Party come to power, we will withdraw this provision in the law beyond any shadow of a doubt. It's going to be in our manifesto. We will not support introducing religion into our citizenship and into our nation's life. This is wrong, and we certainly should not tolerate it in the interests of our country.
Now, India was consistently one of the world's biggest onion exporters till FY23, but the ban on onion exports has changed that and hurt onion farmers and traders. This has also sown resentment against the government, especially from the trading community, which has long been a staunch support base for the BJP. As part of our continuing series Election Exchange, Santya Gora speaks to members from the onion supply chain in Maharashtra.
February-March is peak onion export season, but this onion export house in Maharashtra's Nashik district is strangely silent when it should be buzzing with the labourers, trucks, traders and contractors. Why? Because in December 2023, the Narendra Modi government followed up a 4-month imposition of a 40% export duty on onions with a complete export ban. This has meant thousands of people have lost their jobs.
मैम बैन लगने से पहले जो एक्सपोर्ट हमारे जब भी देख सकते हैं अभी स्टाफ में कम से कम लेबर हमारा 300 से 350 लेबर रहता था। अभी परिस्थिति ऐसे है कि 90% मेरा लेबर घर पर है, जिसमें अभी मेरे पास 30 लेबर 35 लेबर में काम है, उसमें भी आज काम करना है और 3 दिन घर पे बैठना है।
Experts estimate that the onion export ban has already caused economic loss of over 10,000 crore rupees through the supply chain, and even this is likely to be a conservative estimate.
Daily wage labourers are just one of the many groups impacted by the onion export ban, and this is where it gets interesting. Traditionally, the trading community has proven to be a staunch BJP and Modi supporter. However, in Maharashtra, the onion export ban continues to cause huge monetary losses to the traders and exporters. The exporters we spoke to mentioned that if the ban is not lifted in time, it will compel them to reconsider their voting preferences.
दोपहर में काम बंद हो जाता है, काम नहीं रहता है अभी। पहला रात का 2-2 बजे काम चलता था, अभी दोपहर में 2 बजे काम बंद गिर जाता है। और इस चक्कर में अभी इलेक्शन की बात की है तो अभी 2024 में तो हम लोग सोचेंगे, अगर बैन नहीं हटा तो हम लोग भी बीजेपी को वोट देने से पहले एक बार सोचेंगे कि देना है या नहीं देना है। हम हमारा वोट अगर बीजेपी को देने से अच्छा है तो हम नोटा को देके अपना वोट बात कर सकते हैं।
जैसा एयर स्ट्राइक कैसे करते पाकिस्तान पे, ऐसी बात है। रात में 12 बजे गवर्नमेंट बोलती है कि कल से एक्सपोर्ट बैन। अभी जो माल कंटेनर आके खड़ा रहता है, उसके बाद वो माल बॉर्डर पे जाता है, कई हजारों और व्यापारियों का भी कई करोड़ों का लॉस हुआ है।
हम लोग काफ़ी परेशान है उससे, तो उससे कहीं ना कहीं नेगेटिविटी यहाँ पे थोड़ी हमारी बढ़ रही है, क्योंकि हमारा कि ठीक है थोड़ा बहुत अप एंड डाउन होता है बिजनेस में, बट इट्स अ लॉन्ग टाइम कि हम ऑलमोस्ट 6 मंथ से हमारा बिजनेस डिस्टर्ब है।
गवर्नमेंट नीड टू मॉनिटर एवरीथिंग and we are now actually losing hope day by day, but yes, if that come then definitely it will change a bit our perception.
वोटिंग चॉइस में एक्सपोर्ट बैंक का बहुत बड़ा प्रभाव पड़ेगा, क्योंकि हम लोग एक्चुअली पैकेजिंग इंडस्ट्रीज से आते हैं। आज के डेट में 20% हर फैक्ट्रीज वर्क हो रही है, हर जगह का फैक्ट्रीज का ये में लाखों लेबर आज भी बेरोजगार हो रहे हैं, जिसकी वजह से हमें डे टू डे ऑपरेशंस में दिक्कत हो रहा है।
This vote bank is a significant one, considering Maharashtra accounts for around 60% of the country's overall onion exports, and India has consistently been one of the world's largest onion exporters. In FY23, India exported 2.5 million metric tons of onions worth $561 million. It's a number that has only grown every year. But the export duty imposition and the export ban has curtailed onion exports to $469 million in FY24. Experts also point out that a lot of this FY24 number is due to government-to-government exports and a surge in international prices due to high demand and short supply. Maharashtra contributes around 60% to the country's overall exports, which makes onion exports a key business for the state's trading community. But not all experts are convinced these hardships will push the needle when it comes to votes.
I think, the trading community by and large will continue to remain with BJP, pluses, minus here and there.
The Mahayuti government in the state, however, does not want to take any chances and says it has written to the centre asking that the ban be lifted. But traders we spoke to say they will be convinced only when these claims translate into action. In Nashik, Santiagora.
And before we wrap, the Congress released its second list of candidates ahead of the Lok Sabha elections. The party has announced candidates for 43 seats across 5 states. Nakul Nath, the son of former Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Kamal Nath, has been re-nominated from Chhindwara. He had won in 2019 and is the only Congress Lok Sabha MP from the state. Nakul Nath's re-nomination comes weeks after reports emerged that Kamal Nath was upset with the Congress and could perhaps even look at jumping ship. Gaurav Gogoi, son of former Assam CM late Tarun Gogoi, will represent the Congress from the Jorhat seat. Former Rajasthan CM Ashok Gehlot's son Vaibhav is the Congress candidate from Jalore. He contested the 2019 polls from Jodhpur against Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, but lost. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. The news continues. Stay with us on CNBC-TV18. We'll be right back with you.